Okay, good afternoon everybody and welcome back to Sunoikis' Digital Classics. Today, this is our 13th session of this summer term, and we have a session about Romans one by one, classical prosopography using relational and graph-based approaches. So the goal of the session today is to present Romans one by one, which is a database of information on ancient people. And the goal is to present the tool, but also to see how to use it and also how to export, transfer information to a graph database linked to a visualization tool. So we'll see how it works. And our guests today are Rada Varga and Stefan Bornhofen. So Rada has been contributing a lot to Sunoikisis, and also this semester she is helping me to arrange the whole term, while Stefan is, this is the first time you are our guest in Sunoikis. So welcome to Sunoikis, and thank you very much for joining us and for contributing to this session. But I think we can start, and we can start with Rada, who's the first presenter.
Thank you, Monica. Please let me know if you can hear me properly.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. We will have a session today on prosopography with a case study on the Romans one by one database, which has been displayed in SunoikisisDC before in the past semesters. And but today we will focus on presenting a very exciting collaboration with a tool which will be presented by Stefan, a visualization tool. I will screen share now.
Okay, now we have your screen, yes.
You have, okay, great. Sure. As I have spoken on prosopography in previous sessions of SunoikisisDC, I won't go too much into theoretical details today. So I will just present a couple of concepts and of important evolutions in classical prosopography. But we will focus on presenting Romans one by one and Intergraph, the tool presented by Stefan, as mainly as tools which can be used by anybody interested in this kind of research. So what is prosopography, for a start? Merriam-Webster says that prosopography is a study that identifies and relates a group of persons or characters within a particular historical or literary context. Referring especially to historical prosopography, and thus maybe coming with a definition closer to home for many of us, Catherine Keats Rowan defines prosopography as being about what the analysis of the sum of data about many individuals can tell us about the different types of connections between them, and hence about how they operated within and upon the institutions, social, political, legal, economic, intellectual of their time. This is a very good definition, and I think it's very comprehensive. As well, it focuses on the connections between people, and institutions, which is something we will focus on during this session as well. Now, for the classical period, for antiquity, not necessarily the classical period, prosopography has been the subject and the object of scholars' preoccupations since the end of the 19th century, at least. These are some of the most seminal prosopographic works for the ancient period, and the first one, chronologically speaking, and still very important as a reference corpus, basically, is the PIR, the Prosopographia Imperii Romani. These are, of course, what you see here are books, printed books. During the last decades, many of them migrated more or less online. People working on them tried to find ways in which they can be more accessible to online users. And we have all kinds of websites based on the main prosopographic works for antiquity. Here we have the website for PIR, for Prosopographia Imperii Romani. This is one of the technically uncomplicated websites. It's basically a digitization of the printed work. We cannot do much more than what we could do with the book. So we don't have complex search filters. We don't have visualization possibilities. We just have the entries from the book. And I think now they are at the letter R with this digitization work. Nonetheless, even if it's a simple website in terms of technology and in terms of digital humanities, it is useful because it is accessible from anywhere you have an internet connection, of course. The Lexicon of Greek Personal Names comes with a more complex online presentation. They have many filters, combined filters. You can find a lot of information, not only on the names, because if we refer to names, we refer exclusively to onomastics. But we can also find information on the persons. So we have not only the attestations of a name, but as well the attestations of a person. Which is important for us and for our topic today. Then we have the prosopography of the Byzantine Empire, which is, technically speaking, maybe the best prosopographic website. It offers numerous search possibilities, and it combines all kinds of filters and of ways of displaying the information, which make it very, very user-friendly and very accessible for scientists who are interested in details. And another showcase I wanted to present is Trismegistus, which, as I believe most people in classics, of course, know, is not based on a printed version of anything. It was born as a website. It was born online. Trismegistus was not focused on people at the beginning. It was focused on texts, so on sources. It has this feature now, Trismegistus people, which is still very much under construction. It is more focused at this point. It is focused especially on names and less on prosopographic information. But they have the intention of developing these characteristics of the website. And it is very, very useful for Egypt, especially because it has a lot of information from that area. So I think this is the introduction I wanted to give on where prosopography and digital prosopography is at this point. Now I want to go online and pray for the servers to be steady and for the website to work. So this is Romans 1 by 1. I've presented the website and the resource in itself, in all its details before in SunoikisisDC. You can find the other sessions online, so I will not go in all the details of the architecture of the database and so on. I will focus more on the database as a tool, as a working tool, which can be used by students, by researchers, by anyone interested in ancient inscriptions and in ancient prosopography. Technically, the database is nothing fancy. It's a relational MySQL database. The website contains not only the database, but also information on the team, the projects which financed the work, conferences we've organized, educational initiatives. Here you have some references, studies where we've published all the details of the architecture of the database, a manual of the database, and as well scientific analysis, let's say, based on the information collected from here. Romans 1 by 1 is a population database which was built for recording information on people, so prosopographically oriented information, on people attested in epigraphy, in Greek and Latin epigraphy. We don't have a map on the website, and I will explain why in a couple of seconds, but I have decided to show you on this map from the EDH, from the Epigraphic Database Heidelberg, which is a very simple map where you can see the provinces of the Roman Empire clearly. We began by registering all people attested in epigraphs in Dacia, Moesia Inferior and Moesia Superior. This was our original project. Now we also have Pannonia Superior fully covered and parts, some cities of Pannonia Inferior. As well, we have some information from Hispania Tarraconensis, some families registered there. We have the occupational, the professional inscriptions from all the Latin provinces. We have the members of the associations from the Black Sea coast. As you can imagine from the very specific nature of this data, we are talking here about people who use the database for working on private projects or a PhD thesis or so on. Not all the information are open access at this point, because we only go from the work version of the database to the open access one after we clean the information and after the owner is okay with going open access. For example, the associations from the Black Sea coast, their members are part of a PhD thesis, and she is working on publishing it now, and they will come open access when she publishes the book as well. So it has to be obviously comfortable for the owner of the information as well, the point when we go open access. But nonetheless, we have over 18,000 people open access. The work is slow and resource consuming, especially human resource consuming, because the ingestion of the information is done manually, mostly manually, and the information is checked and cross-checked and standardized, made uniform. So it is a rather rigorous process, which is also long and which assumes that some people have the possibility to allocate a large portion of their time for this. Good. Now getting to the tool in itself, we have here on the website a simple option of search where you can look for people if you want some general overviews, if you're not looking for something very specific, if you want to see all people from a province or from a city, if you want to see all people registered in a certain chronological interval, or a general search. You can search for words, general words, any words, and see where they appear in the website and what it means. Or for names, obviously. You can look for, I don't know, all the alius in province, let's say inferior, let's say. I haven't performed this search before, so okay. Not so many, isn't it? And we can download the Excel file for anything on the open access version of the database. You can download the Excels with absolutely every information you find on the website. But we also have for prosopography freaks an advanced search. Here we have all the filters. Almost every field in the database has a corresponding filter. Not all of them, but I think that 75% of them. I think I thought they were useful, and I thought I would like to find them on a different website if I was just a user. So I kept them, even if visually they might be a bit overwhelming, especially for somebody who is here for the first time on the page. But they're not scary. So here we can look for a person, for a certain person, or for persons with more specific common features. Here is the ID. Each person has an ID, a unique identifier, which becomes part of the unique URI. If this is unique, as I'm saying, if we delete a person for some reason, I don't know, maybe it's an inscription which has been reconsidered completely, and we have to just delete one person, then the code will not be assigned to a different person. This is useful because sometimes we do know the ID, because we can find it in a printed article, or we can have it from our own research and want to cross-check it, want to see again some information. So if we know the ID, it's very easy to go directly to the person. I don't know. Let's see something. And we get this with the identifier. I will go back to the personal files in a couple of minutes, so that's why I'm not insisting on what I've displayed right now. Here we have name information, gender, juridical status information, various appurtenance information, military status, if there is the case or if there is not the case. Other, as you can see, other professional, in the end, I think, professional details, occupation title. Let's look for something. And we have the Medici of the Western provinces. It's one of the well-represented professions in epigraphy. We have more extravagant professions as well. Musicians, we have two of them. One of them is from, well, are you still, do you still see my screen share?
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. One of them is from Gallia Narbonensis and one from Baetica. Okay, good. Here we have information for various elite categories. Other details here, especially here connected to a religious preference or religious occupation, age, if the monument is dedicated for or by somebody, which is important if we analyze matters of representation and self-representation. And here we have details connected to the monument in itself, not necessarily the person. So the province and the discovery place, the type of inscription, maybe we only want to see the funerary inscriptions, bibliography, and chronology again, which is obviously very important. Okay, now let's see how a personal file looks like. What are we looking for? Maybe a bit more complex one I would go with. Okay, I will choose one of the persons I will present in intergraph as well. Okay, good. It's a person I've worked on. This is how I knew what I'm going to find in the file. So we have this slave, Herculanus, who is a slave and is an adiutor tabulari. He is attested in 2 inscriptions, both erected by him. And he is an imperial slave and a verna. So he was born in the house of the emperor as a slave. He wasn't bought at some point. And he has a couple of relationships. He is the husband of these 2 women. They are attested, in case you are wondering, we're not talking about bigamy. They are attested on 2 different funerary monuments. So he had 2 successive wives. One of them died and then he remarried, and the other one died as well. And he is the father of a son, Carus. At this point, you can see that we have more links. We very much try to stay true to the source. We've tried not to offer editorial information, so editorial opinions, not information. We have an observation field, which appears when it is filled in the personal file, and where we've noted if something was really necessary to put down. If an inscription, for example, has 2 very different readings and we couldn't find which one is more credible, then we just wrote this down. Otherwise, we've tried to stay true to the sources as much as possible. As it was a prosopographic database, we didn't want to go with all the information on the monument because they exist on many places on the internet and in print. This is the inscription's code. Each inscription has a numerical code associated with the acronym of the province. And this is how the inscription file looks like. So we've only registered the very important stuff. They appear in the Excel files of the persons because I thought it is important. It is like the type of inscription, the dating, which we need when we want to talk about, even if we talk about persons and not monuments, we need this information. Bibliography, obviously. We've tried to refer to the big corpora in the bibliography section and try to avoid small, very specific publications when it was possible, avoiding them, of course, because I consider that everybody has access more easily to the large corpora than to various journals or volumes. As well, we have here, maybe somebody doesn't want to see our inscription file with our opinions, be they as they may be, and wants to see more on the monument itself, and we have the EDH links, where you can see like everything on the inscription. As you know, in the EDH, the entries are quite well developed, photographs and so on and so forth. The persons refer back to us, to Romans 1 by 1, which is great. Of course, you'll find these Romans 1 by 1 ID only for the provinces we have covered so far. Hopefully, there will be many more in the future. And here we also have the Trismegistus ID for the inscriptions which had one, but quite a lot of them did. And here we have the links which direct us to the other persons attested in connection to our main guy, in this case, to our main ID. And here is his first wife. She is only attested on this funerary monument. And let's go to the sons as well. He is son of and son of. And he is also a Verna, born in the house of the Caesars. The inscription says, actually. Okay. So I think this is the general presentation of the database, and I hope it is quite obvious for everybody how it can be used. Now I will stop sharing, okay, and pass it on to Stefan, who will present their tool, the Intergraph, and we'll go on from there. Please.
Thank you, Rada. Stefan, please.
Yes, thank you, Rada. Hello, everybody. My name is Stefan Bornhofen. I am a teacher and researcher at CY Tech, which is an engineering school near Paris, an engineering school in computer science. And I recently worked on in the domain of data visualization and concerning Romans 1 by 1 and more generally digital collections in digital humanities. I want to present an alternative, a complementary way to visualize your data. So let me share my screen now.
Okay, yes.
Can you see it? Okay.
Yes, we have it.
Great. So the database Roman 1 by 1 is a perfect example of what you can call a relational data model. What does this mean? It means essentially that you have the information stored in tables where the information types are the columns and each row is a data. And there may be connections between the tables, so the people are linked to the encryptions where they are cited in. And these links are modeled by a field which contains an identifier which links to the other table. And when you query these databases, what you get is essentially lists. You get a lot of lists. Rada showed you this kind of lists. So here, for example, you have a list of persons, which comes out of a query. And well, this is fine, because most of the time, these lists get the job done. You can filter for keywords or other properties. But if you are interested in a more broader understanding, a more broader understanding of your data, you have to admit that it is difficult to grasp the context of data. For example, if I ask, how is a person represented in the collection? Which person appear together, or how does this change over time? Can we compare some persons and their connections? So it is difficult to continue working with lists. So I now want to suggest a complementary perspective on the data, a completely alternative data model. So what if we see a person as a data point, which we call a node. And now we can imagine that this person is connected to the inscriptions where it appears. So this, we call this a link or an edge. So for example, chaos would be linked, would be appearing in 4 different inscriptions. And what if now we would visualize the other persons which appear in the same inscriptions, like so? And perhaps we even have places where they lived or where they worked, and we put it on the same screen. And well, this might be an abstract example, but I see that I think that you get the idea of visualizing this data in form of a graph. You immediately have another approach, a better overview of your data. So can Romans 1 by 1 and other collections, can they be modeled in form of a graph? And the answer is yes. It is happening a lot recently in the digital humanities, where collections are being modeled and remodeled as a form of graphs. So these databases can be handcrafted, as it is the case in Romans 1 by 1, but also they can be automatically generated by tools which can do a named entity recognition. This means that these tools, they crawl through the texts of your collections, and they automatically see and identify persons, places, and put it in databases. So by this means, digital humanities has accumulated a lot of collections of multimedia objects with a lot of metadata and annotations, and these informations are interconnected through networks. So you can imagine that the data is very complex, and we can categorize 2 families of data. On the one hand, the data can be dynamic, which means that the graphs can evolve over time. The relationships can evolve. For example, people which work together, which live together for a certain interval of time, they won't do it another time interval. And the data can also be multi-layer, which means that we have even different types of data. We have the persons, we have the places, we have other data like dates or events, even topics. And you can imagine that this data lies on separate layers of your graph. In any case, this complex data has to be visualized, and it is not evident how to do it in a straightforward fashion. In the last years, I was involved in the Blizzard project, which is a European French-Luxembourgish project on graph visualization. And our scope, our objective was the design of new ways to visualize complex graphs, which notably are dynamic and multi-layer. Of course, there are already a huge number of graph visualization tools out there. So for example, Gephi and Cometrix are pretty established tools with a large user community, but they are not really appropriate for complex data. And it involves a bit of configuration and network expertise to get the visualization done. On the other hand, there are rather experimental tools like MaxWidth and Multinet, which are capable of grasping the complexity of multi-layer and dynamic data. But these tools are not mature, and it is difficult to inject your data in these tools. So to conclude, we can say that for the time being, there is no appropriate visualization software for an exploratory workflow. What do I mean by that? That means that if you have put up a graph that you want to visualize, and you are interested in another graph which is close to it, perhaps which is related to it, you cannot do it in a swift way. The graphs visualization tools which exist, they do not offer a lot of follow-up functionalities, and more importantly, they do not allow to link back to the resources and to the documents where the entities appear. So this is why we designed a new tool, which is called Intergraph, which is meant to become a graph visualization tool dedicated to different digital humanities collections. And the main idea is to offer a scene of graphs, of small subgraphs, which can be modified. The user can interactively add or alter and delete the graph, so that you do not deal with the entirety of your data, but only with a small amount of data which you are currently interested in. And this allows you to have a structured and understandable amount of your data. Please do not forget this ongoing work. So this is only a prototype. So there might be some features missing, and I already apologize for that. So the currently working databases are 3. There was the original Blizzard database, which was called Histograph, which deals with multimedia documents on the European integration. So this is rather a recent history. Then we adopted Intergraph to the Register Imperii, which is a collection of records of letters from the Roman German kings and popes from the Middle Ages. And we also adopted Intergraph to work with the Romans 1 by 1 database. And this is what we are here to get today. So more concretely, to give you a better understanding of the data model Intergraph is working with, you just imagine that you have a source, a document, and in this source, there are entities appearing. So most of the time you think of persons which appear in the document, but it could be a place or another entity. And if 2 persons appear in a document, we can calculate another link, which is called co-appearing. So this is called in graph theory projection. 2 persons or 2 entities co-appear in a document. So this is the co-appearance graph, excuse me, but there are also other links imaginable, such as links between persons. A person can be the father of another person. A person can be born in a place, or even a person can be the author of a document, and so on and so on. So you have to think in these notions when you work with graph models. So let me now show you Intergraph and its most important functionalities. So I will go to the Intergraph page. Can you see the screen?
Yes, yes, it works.
So we have on the left, we have a keyword search for the nodes you are interested in. So this is Intergraph working with the Register Imperii database. I chose these examples because this database is a little bit richer, has more attributes which I could show, and Rada will show you some applications with the Romans 1 by 1 database. But the methods are exactly the same. So here we can ask for, let's say, for a family name. So we look for Muffel. So Muffel was a family, a rich family in the Middle Ages, and we get back a list of people which are linked to the name Muffel. So you have the name of the person, and you have the number of appearances of this person in the collection. So Niklas 3 is appearing 74 times. And there's also a column which shows how often the person is recipient of a letter of the Pope. So they not only can appear in the letters, but they can also be the recipients. So now we can, for example, ask, well, if we take Jacob, what register is he appearing in? So I right-click and I will ask for the register which he is appearing in, and then I get a new list of the register, which are the documents of where this person is appearing. So we see that, for example, here this is the code of this document, and if I'm interested what it is about, I can inspect it, and then so the excuse me. Do you see the link?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, so okay. So,
okay.
So then it takes you. It should take you to the link.
Okay. Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. So you can let me try another one. Okay. Inspect. Okay. And it takes you to the link. Okay. Sorry, I cannot open the database. Never mind. So if you go back to the initial query, we can also ask, for example, which persons are or which entities are co-appearing with Niklas. So I can ask for co-appearing entries, and it gives you a list of entities. You will see that these are persons which co-appear, but there are not only persons. It can be a place, it can be an item, and so on. Because register and Perry, they do not only work with persons, but with other types of entities. And we have the appearance of these persons in the collection, but we also have the co-appearance with Niklas. And we have an index which scores how interesting is the co-appearance of this person compared to other co-appearances. Because if we see, for example, Pleasure, Friedrich, is co-appearing 70 times with Niklas. But if I scroll down, we may notice that there are other nodes which occur more often. Rada is a co-appearing 36 times. Or what can we have else? Sometimes there is a city which co-appears a lot, 19 times, which is more. But you don't have to forget that Nuremberg is appearing 600 times overall in the collection. So 19 times, 19 co-appearances out of 600 may be less interesting than 17 co-appearances out of 17 appearances. So the card index is a score which allows you to bubble up the nodes which co-appear the most compared to the overall appearances. Okay, when you have your queries, you can delete the queries you are not interested in. And so far, we did produce a lot of lists, right? So this is not really different from what Rada showed you with the relational database model. So now let us put up some graphs. You want to visualize graphs. So there are three types of graphs we can produce. The Cyto canvas, the 3 canvas, and the map canvas. The map canvas, we do not deal with it today because this is not operational. It is meant to become a map where the issues, the place of issues of the documents can be plotted. So let me just talk about the 2 other canvases. 1 second. Okay, so let me talk about the 3 canvas. It is called 3 canvas because the technology of the graph rendering is 3.js. This is why we called it 3 canvas. So the 3 canvas is the co-appearance canvas. If I select all modules of my database and I generate a graph, do you see the graph? No?
No.
Oh, 1 second. Ah, that's a pity. What is happening? Does the other? It's appearing. Okay, sorry. It's just it was just taking some time. Okay, so here, this is the graph we produced out of all the muffles in the database, and each point, each node is a person, and if there's a link, it means that they co-appear. So we see that Brigitta and Anton are two muffles which co-appear in a document. And we also have 4 muffles which co-appear between each other in a number of documents. And then we have Jacob and Niklas, which do not seem to co-appear with the family members. So now let us, for example, take Heinrich and ask for his co-appearing persons. So we have Hieronymus, Niklas, and Gabriel, but we also Sigmund, which is not a muffle. So we select them and we generate another graph besides the old one. Okay, like so. And if you have a link between the graphs, this means that it is the same node. So this 3 canvas allows to visualize co-appearances between the entities of your collection. And now let me go over to the Cyto canvas, which may be more powerful as with respect to what you want to achieve, because the Cyto canvas allows to visualize all links which are directly encoded in the database. So let me now take the muffles and let me show the graph which we get with the Cyto canvas. So this is these are the links which are encoded in the data in the database. We have all muffles which are connected to a central node, which is the muffle family. The muffle family is not a node appearing in the documents, but it's just an auxiliary node to link together all the muffles. So now we could ask, for example, what are the documents where Anton is appearing? You cannot see the documents, but when we right-click on Anton, we can expand the node and we get all the links where he's connected to. And we see that Anton is connected to a regest, which has this code, Schmel 8941. And there's another person appearing, which is Brigitta. And we know it because on the other canvas, if I go back, we saw that Anton and Brigitta are co-appearing. And indeed, this is what you get in this view also. Note that we do not see that Brigitta is the wife of Anton, because this link is not encoded in Regesta and Perry, but it very well is encoded in Romans 1x1. So this is a choice of the data model modeler. So now we can expand other nodes. For example, we expand Heinrich, and we see that Heinrich is appearing in one other document, and so are the four persons which we know from the 3 canvas, because they have been interconnected, as you see here. So now, if we take the document and we expand not only the person, but we can continue to expand and to grow our graph. So we expand this document and we see that now there are places appearing. So there is the place of issue, and there are places which are mentioned in the document. And now you see that the graph is growing and growing, and you can explore your data by this means. Perhaps you even may not be interested anymore in the right side of the graph, the muffle family, so you can collapse it or even delete it, and you can reduce your graph. So this allows, in an iterative way, to navigate through your data and to navigate towards the information you are interested in. So now I hope that you understood the concept and the main features of Intergraph. And I let Rada take over to show you some concrete examples in the Romans 1x1 database.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, Stefan. Okay, so Rada.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Let me screen share again. Do you see my screen?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. So I will show you now what Romans 1x1 resulted in when it was ingested in Intergraph. We've put much value on our collaborations at Romans 1x1 because I believe this is one of the great things in having open access resources. You can use them in many ways, and you can create tools useful for a large community. As Stefan was rightly saying, the great thing about Intergraph is that if you already have a database ingested in it, it is very easy to generate the graphs. You don't need to work for them as much as you have in Gephi or in other software, where you basically have to generate your own spreadsheets to generate or to create them one way or the other. Okay, the first example I will choose, I won't take exceedingly long. The first example I will choose is the one I've showed you before in Romans. So let me see. Let me put it. So this is what we have. This is our Romans 1x1 entry with the prosopographical information and the story of this guy. This is him. Has two appearances. We select him and we go and see the co-appearing entities, and we select all of them. And here we have the small network of Herculanus. I'm working in Cito canvas now, and I'm having this. I can arrange it, as you can see. I can make it pretty. If I want to use this in a presentation for an article or for a class, I only have to take a screenshot of it. It was very easy to generate it. And now maybe we want to see why this guy is in the middle of the network and how he relates to and we see the sources, how he relates with the other persons. We see the sources, we can arrange them a bit so that we visually understand what's happening here. And we have it very clearly. We have this side and this side. It's an inscription attesting him and one wife, and another inscription attesting him and the other wife and the child. Okay, we can do the same actually now. We're gonna do in I'm gonna show you the 3 canvas for a different example. We can now clear the canvas. And let's go to another example. None of the ones suggested. I want this guy, this Aurelius Aquila. I have these co-appearing entities, and this guy appears twice as well. So I want his co-appearing entities as well. I can select them all because it will only add. So if a person appears as a co-appearing entity for 2 other persons, it won't copy it 2 times. It won't double the information if the information is identical. And we can here again generate a very, very nice graph. And here we have this Aquila's network, direct and indirect. He has a son, he has a wife, he has 2 friends, and one of his friends is attested on a different monument along with a co-worker. I know it's on a different monument because I know the example, but we can go to sources and then we will see the different sources we have the attestations. Here, the number of sources involved, it's a bit larger. So here our characters appear on a number of 3 inscriptions, and only from from this dissipated pieces of information we get to build the network. We can also generate 3 canvas for these persons. Maybe I will go back, so I'm selecting this one. If you switch between the types of canvases, you have to reselect. It doesn't keep the selection. And I'm generating the graph, which I can enlarge in order to see the labels. And if I want to see the source, it gives me the source. It's selecting them if I click on them. We have different colors here according to the sources of attestation. An interesting example that I will only show you a bit, and maybe if you want to work with it, let's remove this. If you want to work with it more, you could do it. Okay. It's this one. I'm deleting the previous searches in order to keep it clean, not to get disoriented. So this is a different kind of network. Here we don't have so many direct connections, because here the people are attested on various contracts, a house selling contract, working contracts. So they have commercial relationships, but not all of them. And you will see not all of them with all the others. And you will see how this looks like. So we're in the 3 canvas. Let's see her co-appearing entities. We're selecting them all. And let's keep it like this for now. And let's generate the graph. This is her graph, the co-appearing entities of this lady, Andrea Batonis. She was apparently a pretty rich and important person in this mining community where she is attested. I would like to do the same thing now in the Cito canvas. Okay, I've selected Andrea as well. Okay, I have to clear this so that we get a clean canvas, a clean sheet. And ta-dam! We have people attested in the same source, but they don't have a direct relationship between them, because the contract doesn't imply this. Some of them are witnesses, for example. Others are just signing for ratification, but they don't have co-working relationships or neighboring relationships with the others. Here we have another thing I wanted to mention was the fact that we have the relationships doubled somehow. The explicitation of the relationships is doubled. This is one of the perks, let's say, from transposing the relational database into this graph database. Because in the relational database, we obviously need both links. Here it's co-worker, which is the same. But in other cases, it is husband or wife. So we need the link for both persons as the lines are directed. So we need X is the husband of Y and Y is the wife of X. This is why the doubling of the information. Okay. I think this is it. I don't want to be too long. Here is the exercise we're proposing, or the exercises. One of the reasons I didn't insist so much on Andrea is because you might use her in the exercise. What we are proposing is using Romans 1 by 1 and Intergraph for writing a short prosopographical essay or note. So it should have the story of the character, the story of its connections, everything you can say on that very person in a prosopographical context, as well as the visualization of the person's network. So a social network visualization in the Intergraph. You can take one of the cases I presented, going in all the details of their jobs as well, of the context of attestation, or you can, of course, choose a different person. These are a couple of suggestions, but they are not compulsory in any way. There are other persons in the database with a lot of relationships and which are interesting to showcase. Okay, great. I think this is it. And we can now answer to questions.
Okay, Rada, thank you very much, and also Stefan. So it was great, really, a fantastic presentation about the two tools, and then what we can get from it. So we have people on YouTube, and also, well, we have here StreamYard. So please, if there are questions, yes, please, Eleni.
Thank you, Stefan and Rada. Very interesting presentations and very interesting tools. I was obviously more familiar with the Romans 1 by 1 than the Intergraph, but thank you both. They tied very well. I have two questions, one for Romans 1 by 1 and the other one for Intergraph. Rada, you mentioned that in your database you have certain fields and basically certain types of information about the people you are recording. So what if one of the contributors has an additional kind of information? Do you input an additional field? Can it be accommodated? How do you deal with this?
Yes, if that type of information cannot be integrated in any of the fields we have, if we are working exclusively on classical Greek and Latin epigraphy, I don't really see what kind of information couldn't be accommodated because we have a lot of fields, but I am aware that there might be some types of information, especially maybe if you work on the city of Rome. We didn't work on that, where you have, that's what's coming to my mind now, a lot of religious functions that maybe are not easily integrated in any of the fields we have at this point. The contributors cannot add fields. This is an admin right. Obviously, we have to limit and to control this somehow. But anybody can write to us, and we will definitely add the field. If it's an epigraphic information, we will add the field for it.
Thank you. Thank you. And one question regarding Intergraph, which is a very interesting visualization tool, and then I'll let it cede the floor to everybody else. You mentioned that you basically fed the Romans 1 by 1 database into Intergraph. So do you have, is there a link on Romans 1 by 1 that links to that? Are you how are you listed? How do we do the searches that you showed on Intergraph on its individual database? How are they connected?
How they are connected? Well, the data, already I have to say, I don't think that we have the entirety of the database. Rada, I think you're just a part of it for exploratory purposes to see how it works, and we could be completed afterwards. But the database was recreated from scratch, which means that Rada exported her database in a file, and then I imported it as a graph model. So the links, the connections between the tables become edges in the graph database, because you have to reason with nodes and edges and so on. But it was exported and imported. It's not that the graph database queries the original database or something.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you both.
I have a related question, because so in the graph we can clearly see the assertions about relations, and I could see something like son of, father of, wife, etc. So do you have, I imagine, so an ontology to describe this, and of course, knowing ancient prosopography, so this is something we can say, okay, we can represent these relations, but there are many relations. So did you build your own assertions? This is the first thing, to represent relations among people. And given that in Intergraph there are other projects also, do you have a common ontology for Romans 1 by 1 and then for other projects? And related to this, also for your database, Rada, so you have many fields and you know the field. So I imagine a lot of work for producing these fields, because, and as you said, we don't want editorial opinions, which is the most difficult part, because still when we produce a database, this is very difficult, in the sense that, of course, this is our effort, I know that by experience, but in the end, we have to interpret that in some way. So this is my question.
Let me just answer to the question if there's a common data model. This is a very interesting topic, indeed. For the time being, it was rather Intergraph, which adapts to the data. So we had to configure things that it works with the notions and the kind of thinking of the different relational databases. But it would be very interesting to get a data model where any other collection could inject data, and it directly works with Intergraph. But it would be the other way around, that it is Intergraph who dictates the data model, and then the databases have to adapt. So this is not done, and this is a very interesting research topic, so that other databases can be pretty much quicker get connected to this visualization tool.
Yes, so as Stefan said, at this point we've used the ontology we've used for Romans 1 by 1 for our relationships. In Romans 1 by 1, we've we've used the parts we needed from various ontology. We used the ontology for relationships, the ontology from Snapdragon. We've used the ontologies from Eagle for types of monuments, materials. As our types of information in this regards were not off stream in any way, so we had regular monuments, regular materials, regular relationships, something you generally find in epigraphy. It's this wasn't complicated, and it didn't make any sense to invent a new ontology. I mean, so yes, regarding the editorial Opinions, yes, of course. You interpret the source in the end. It's unavoidable. Even when you transcribe it from Latin and you translate it, you interpret it. But what I meant was that we were trying to keep this at a decent minimum. So we didn't have fields of name ethnicity, let's say, which can be useful in onomestical researches, but which are definitely very deductive and can be interpreted in many ways in many cases.
Okay, no, thank you for your answers, because I think that this is very, very important. So the effort today, again, is the difficulty is to represent a complex field, like in this case, prosopography from inscriptions, and on the other side, to try to follow standards, again, to connect different projects concerning different languages, different cultures. This is an effort for humanists and classicists on one side, and for computer scientists. I'm sorry, I'm using this generic label, but I know that by experience, and this is very important. So this is the reason why I mentioned you. And Rada, you mentioned two resources for our audience: Snapdragon, so the standard for networking ancient prosopographies, which is a project now trying to connect data from different prosopographies and connect this data and using these ontologies. And then Eagle, okay, the big project connecting different databases for inscriptions. And this is another interesting part, because Eagle has been connecting projects that began in the past, also 20, 30 years ago. So there is a lot of work in this sense to convert data produced in the past. So I'm mentioning this for our audience in the case students couldn't immediately get the references to this project. But this is the effort, I know, so to try to follow ontologies that we have, and also in general in the field of, I can say, for classical prosopography, we have established ontologies or languages that we can, of course, always discuss forever about these representations. And also for the fields of your database, of course, you are following what we have in scholarship today. And I have another question about data production, because this is interesting. At the beginning, you said, okay, this is a database, something not fancy. I can totally understand it and follow what you mean, but producing data is complex, and as you said, it's time consuming. I know that, because it can seem something boring and not interesting, but this is, I think, the interesting part, or at least the part that we have to do today, and especially starting from the perspective of a classicist. Maybe it seems not so interesting, but it is, because the graphs that you showed really represent many things, and really we can represent not only the visualization, which is wonderful, but then starting from it we can really represent many things. Also, when you showed the document connecting people, even if there is not a direct relationship or something that usually we don't get from traditional scholarship. So my question is, and this is maybe something that I missed at the beginning of your presentation. So where do you get your data, in the sense that you read inscriptions and you extract from it information, and then you put this information in the database, which means names and then other information like the gender, date, etc. But we also use bibliographic resources. This question is also to clarify for our audience, especially for the students, to see a concrete problem of data production. So is my question clear?
Yes, I think it is. Yes, basically we read the inscriptions and take the information and put it in each corresponding field. We are trying to refer to the latest reading of the inscriptions when there is the case of reinterpretations. And if there isn't the case, if the inscription was clear from the start and it remains so, we are trying to refer to the large corpora, because I think everybody has access to the CIL or the e.g. or the Année Epigraphique, but not everybody might have access to some journal from Serbia or from Romania written in the local languages. And we are trying to link the inscriptions with the sources repository in epigraphy existing online, which are the EDH and the Klaus Labi. We have also introduced Trismegistus IDs recently, so that people can cross-check the source as well as this can be made. I think this linking to, we didn't want to store information, too much information on the sources themselves, because they already exist online, of course. But I think one of the main advantages is that EDH and is connected to Lupa and even has photos of many of the inscriptions. So if somebody really wants to go into the details of the reading or the reconstruction of words, they can actually use the photos as well. They don't have to believe any of the editors.
Okay, so
can I just add add something, because this question reminds me of the original database Histograph, where Intergraph was designed for, because this database was created from automated entity extraction. So they were capable of running a recognition process over thousands of documents in no time, instead of having to handcraft every line of every row of your database, which is very tempting. But on the other hand, the drawback is a lot of induced errors, because the software will recognize persons which are not persons, or places which are not places, or which create duplicates and so on. And now the database is there, and it's a huge database, but on the other hand, so they have to deal with inherent false information. So this is a trade-off that I want to point out.
Thank you very much for this note. So you mean that, but I didn't get to the project. So in this case, so OCR was used to try to automatically read inscriptions, if I understood what you said. But this was for what project?
It was the Histograph project. They ran TextRaiser and another tool that I forgot over the files, and then they had the entities recognized, but there were a lot of errors induced.
Okay, now this is very, very interesting, because again, yes, another part of research today is to extract data using OCR. Of course, we have to use editions, and there are problems, especially for inscriptions, because, and I understand what you say, because we have been working a lot with OCR, and definitely a problem of OCR post-correction also. But this is in any case an interesting experiment, because we have to produce training data also to help the machine to improve this part, because we can't produce everything by hand, of course, which is interesting on one side, but this is another interesting aspect. And so maybe we can devote another session in the future about this. So thank you really for mentioning this part of the project. But again, we always need a mixture of manual and automatic work. And going back to what Rada was saying, so this is another important thing about accessibility. So from a philological point of view, the idea to provide information from a big corpora for Latin inscriptions, because that's true. So usually these corpora they are accessible in libraries, now also online. And then, of course, if you want to get a new reading of an inscription, that we have other resources, also Trismegistus, for example, in Trismegistus people, we can get many bibliographic resources about people, and then through it about, of course, new possible readings of inscriptions. So in this case, it's a good criterion, because again, sustainability, this is also sustainability. So how can we really produce something in a sustainable amount of time, considering human resources, financial resources, and computational resources. So thank you for this. Sorry, I wanted to focus on these aspects because this is the goal of Sunoikis, is also to deal with the questions concerning accessibility in general, and also concrete problems, okay, for data production and data representation. Okay, so unfortunately our time is over. I have many other questions, but of course we can't now, unfortunately, but for our audience, we have the class outline on GitHub, so with a full description of this session. You have links to resources, so you can play with these tools. So sorry for this verb, but really you can experiment. If you are a classicist, you can really enjoy working with data from Latin inscriptions. If you are interested in computational problems, if you are a computer scientist, you can again play with the graph to understand the complexities of prosopographical data and really see concretely how prosopography is really constituted by assertions about relations among people and documents, in this case, to simplify, I know. So our time is over, and next week we will have another session. And this is the last session of this semester, but I have an important note about this, because the session will not be on Thursday as usual, but will be on Wednesday, okay? Wednesday, July 8th. In any case, you already have on GitHub a description of the session with the date, and also the time is different because it will be at 6:30 p.m. Central European Summer Time, okay? So this is our reference time zone. In any case, everything is on GitHub, and you also have the YouTube link. This session is about a digital model of ancient Rome, okay? Is a session about a large-scale digital model of ancient Rome using SketchUp, and this session will be chaired by Valeria Vitale, because this is part of the 3D Summer School of the Institute of Classical Studies, London. So you will have the session on our YouTube channel for Sunoikis Digital Classics, but there is this difference in terms of day, Wednesday, time 6:30 p.m. and you don't have the usual session outline because this is mainly a conference, but in any case you have information on GitHub. Okay, so I thank you very much really for this great session. Stefan and Rada, thank you for joining us today, for showing these two tools and many connections among different projects. And I also thank Eleni for joining us today, for her questions, and our audience. I know that there are people on YouTube, and please, you can also, after the session, add comments in the YouTube chat, because they will stay there. Okay, so I wish you a good night for those who are in my time zone. Otherwise, a good afternoon for other people in another time zone, and see you next week. Okay, so bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Ciao.